Hey, what's up, everybody? I got asked this question recently. Oh boy. Did you come to the right channel? Do you know? Am I the correct person that you want to be asking this question? And I can say, let's go back to the pretty background. Um, so the question was, how do you make friends, right? So we'll answer that. And I'm telling you, this kind of question is not a good question for me because it's going to be a pretty depressing answer. Again, I'm someone that I've told before, or that I've said before on this channel. I'm someone that was actually force fed the red pill. I was forced to overdose on the red pill growing up and seeing social interactions and everything like that. You could say that I'm sort of black pill, even, unfortunately. But to go to that, before I start this video entirely, remember, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you can. I appreciate it. Thanks. Super chat, PayPal, Patreon. Tell your grandma to watch. What did your grandma, what else does your grandma have to do? Tell grandma to give the video a like. Anyway, and I can say before I answer this, I saw a couple of comments recently on my videos. They just totally disappeared. I want to say I did not delete them. So I was going to respond to the comments and they just totally disappeared. So I don't know what happened with that. But anyway, how do you make friends and all this kind of stuff? Man, dude, again, I'm probably not the most positive person for this. But I'll tell some stories, and these will be dark, scary stories, I think, about human nature, right? And I think, of course, you have to put yourself out there to be friends, but I'm a big believer, and I've said this before, that generally speaking, most people are just acquaintances, right? There's this idea, and I am a believer in it, that most people at any time, they only have 5 real friends in their life, right? Maybe they have many quotation marks friends, but there's probably only 5 real friends that you have in your life at one moment, right? And those friends, they might just only be your friend for that moment. They might not be forever, right? Because if you think about what actually makes a friend, you probably have some kind of endeavor or some sort of hobby that you're both into, that you're both interested in, right? And you think about human beings as like social animals, let's say, right? If you have a similar interest with somebody, or if you're on a similar social totem pole, right, it's probably more likely that you can be friends, right? Now, of course, you can do stuff to try to be more friendly, right? You can just be a friendly person. You can try to be a little bit, let's say, socially calibrated. An example might be, if you watch my videos here, right? My personality here on YouTube when I'm just talking is probably a little bit different than if you were to go watch that interview I did with Anime Illuminati, that Japanese interview, right? I was quite a bit more friendly, enthusiastic, right? Although I am a nerd, I am perhaps more socially calibrated than some other nerds, you could say. And that is what was the good way to act, you could say, for the situation. It's fun for everybody for me to be silly, right? So, you need to be a little bit adaptable to your surroundings, right? But again, ultimately, I think a lot of people are just, and this is like the red pill. A lot of people are not your quotation marks real friend. They're just an acquaintance. Most people are not, sadly, are not meant to be friends forever, right? And if the person writing this is saying because they are unpopular, it is probably, and it's sad to say, you're probably going to be friends with more likely unpopular people, since that's perhaps your social circle of where you're starting off with, right? It's just a sad thing, right? So that's a good reason to be able to have different kind of hobbies that you're into, because then you have more chances to find someone else that you have a similar interest with, you could say, right? Like, I've had a lot of sort of weird, into fragrances. So I've had quotation marks fragrance friends who tend to be more financially well off. I've been a nerd. I am a nerd, you could say. So I have more nerdy quotation marks friends. I work out, so I have quotation marks fitness friends. you know, because of how I look, I have friends who just think maybe I'm quotation marks cool, right? But are a lot of these people my real friends? Again, and that's, I'm not a positive person to be asking about this because, again, I don't think most people really are friends with each other. And a lot of friendships are just that of convenience. And again, maybe your situation is you're not popular. And it could be that if you are not a popular person, you probably more likely might start off being friends with people that are also not popular, right? I mean, unless you start to become outgoing, make yourself presentable, take care of yourself. So then you are approachable, right? Because then you look approachable, you could say, right? So again, there's lots of things you could do to try to be a friendly person. And I think probably if you're watching this or anyone watching this, I think if you're being honest with yourself, to make friends, you have to try to make friends. You have to make yourself approachable. You have to try. You have to, just like when you're trying to pick up girls, you have to put yourself out there to pick up the girls a lot of time in the first place. I was talking to some guys recently about this, and just like the people that I know that get laid the most, right? They are the people that it's like a numbers game, right? I've said this before in terms of picking up girls, and I'm going to go to some dark, scary stories, but that just shows you that nobody is really your friend, right? The people that I know that have been dudes that pick up lots of girls, they are dudes that I would not say have admirable game, so to speak, right? Or be like, whoa, dude, that was slick, whatever. Like, I mean, I've gone up to girls. And I'm not a guy that gets laid a lot, right? Now, I have a lot of girls, right? I mean, I somehow I've lived a very long time high on the totem pole. I shouldn't say high. High's not probably the word. I've been somehow desirable to women for many years, somehow for some fake reason. But, I'm not someone, I just don't have that kind of sex drive. And I don't have that. I'm not trying to get laid a lot, so to speak, right? I have specific things that I like, and when you're sick, you're not thinking about sex a lot. But what I mean is, I've hung out with dudes who you would say are good looking, right? And honestly, the dudes that get laid the most are just the people that are that outgoing, and they try to bang everybody, basically, right? You know what I mean? So if you want to be a social butterfly, so to speak, that is going to help you make friends. As long as you yourself are keeping yourself presentable, if you can try to be socially calibrated for the situation. I use the anime Illuminati interview because that is an example of, obviously, that's not my personality all the time, but look at that. And that's, if you look at me here talking to you now, but if you look at that interview, I was much more jokey and silly because that is what people want in that situation. Just like if you go to a party, you don't want to be the Debbie Downer kind of person, right? You want to be the more friendly kind of person, right? Now, ultimately, I'm not a big kind of party person because I'm just sick a lot, and I don't drink or do drugs or anything like that. So it's not really my vibe, but I think if you see something like that, you'd probably say for a nerd, I'm a nerd, right? You could say that's a socially, again, calibrated thing to do because it's what the situation required. Just like if you've seen those videos of me, well, God, if you've ever gone to my Instagram, sometimes, I have people that stop me all the time, right? It's ridiculous, like I'm famous or something, right? Just like I've showed videos of girls coming up to me. I am approachable, right? And when people approach me, I'm not like standoffish or something like that, right? I try to be friendly and I throw the positive vibe back at them, and we collaborate on the friendly, quotation marks, the friendly experience, right? But some good examples, and this is where the red pill and the black pill kind of stuff comes into, whereas force fed. You got to remember, I'm someone that I grew up very unpopular. right? I grew up beat up at the bus stop, unpopular. I was one of the most unpopular kids in school, as I've talked about before. I had rocks thrown at my face. One day I had to go home from school because rock hit my face and I was bleeding, dude. I was extremely unpopular, right? And then that being force fed the red pill, then I started going through puberty, got through the awkward stage, so to speak, and I became quotation marks cool, right? And I saw how differently people treated me, right? Just like you could say a lot of people, let's say the LGBTQ, let's say, right? I had so many LGBTQ people friends back in the day. People actually used to think that I was gay, actually, right? Because I was just a friendly person with everybody, right? You know, now they hate me because I didn't have sex with some of them, right? That shows you how fake that friendship is, and like friendships are fake, right? That's an example, right? Just like I show girls hated me before. Oh, then I became quotation marks cool. Oh, I've had girls, oh my God, I loved you in middle school. I always had a crush on you. I loved you. What? You know what I mean? I've had so many experiences of that in my life, even as I am an adult, and, you know, I have quotation marks, you could say, outlived so many, because I'm old at this point, right? I have outlived not only my generation growing up, I have outlived the next generation of girls, the next generation of girls, right? I've had all these different age groups of girls and I'm still quotation marks. It blows my mind. I still have girls that find me desirable, right? But then many of these girls, right? And I've said this before, one of my problems with girls is I am sort of, what is it? I have a sort of a disingenuous social proof, right? Because of how I look, girls often think, oh, I must be famous or something like that. But then sometimes there are those groups of people that, oh, maybe he's an asshole or something like that. And they're like, oh, he's nice. But then like, oh God, I found out he's sick. And they're like, oh, I feel so guilty now. And it's just like this like tug and pull. And it's like a bad vibe, right? And then so I'll have girls too, like, oh my God, he's so hot. I want to fuck you all the time. Or they want to be with me all the time. Oh, I found out you're sick. Oh, it's okay if you're sick. Wait, you're really sick? Oh, I don't like you now, basically. Oh, wait a second. You're not sick right now. You're feeling a little bit better. Let's go do something. Like totally fake relationships, right? And again, this doesn't even go for just relationship wise, like boy, girl, or I guess if you're boy, or girl, right? I've told this story, and this story is actually kind of a few years old now, right? And this is like this is a pretty dark and a scary story, right? And it just goes to show that, you know, friendships are very fleeting, right? This is a story that I told it about a few years ago when it happened, right? I was friends with a group of people from the video game community, just so happens, right? And this goes to, and this will really drive home, hopefully, in your brain. And this is where this story gets probably depressing. And you're like, oh God, I should have stopped listening because life doesn't matter. Black pill, right? So I had a group of friends in the video game community who I knew before I even got sick, right? I sort of, you could say, not exactly, but, you know, we sort of grow up is a strong word, but I was so young at the time. Certainly we have spent a lot of time together, right? They knew me right when I first started entering tournaments, and I was like a nobody that, again, I said before, right when I started going to tournaments, I started winning, like, whoa, who are you, right? And that made me cool because we both have a hobby of video games, right? Oh my God, you play video games and you're good, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, these people have known me since before I was sick, so to speak. And they knew me after radiation, my hair coming all out. Some of these people have even been there when I couldn't walk, and they were helping me, right? When I couldn't walk, right? They've seen how messed up I am, right? My tribulations, so to speak, health-wise, right? going through life or death stuff, right? I wonder if I could go find it. I might even be able to find when my doctors were giving me my will, I had even written them, I think. I might actually have that. I believe it was actually a Gmail thing, and I had sent them because my doctors were giving me my will. And I'm like, if there's anything that I have left after this, do this. I wonder if I could actually go find that. But then I feel like if I look for it like that, that might be even more like creepy. But anyway, point is, they've known me when I've gone through a lot of stuff, right? Anyway, as I've said before, as years have gone on, right? Dying stuff, all this kind of stuff. And I know if there's a hater watching this video, they'll say it's fake or something like that. As said before, I'm someone that doesn't play a lot of video games like that. I was never someone that like plays video games all day long, blah, blah, blah. Although RPGs, I've played a lot of RPGs all day long. At one point in my life, when I was giving up on life, I was playing a lot of RPGs, let me tell you. But fighting game wise, I'm just someone that I've had natural skill at fighting games. You know, I'm lucky enough that I was able to win, and I've done a lot of stuff in video games, right? But some of these guys, I mean, they were very, very devoted to video games, right? I mean, one of these guys, he was the guy that he used to fall asleep at the arcade because he would just stay at the arcade all day, just falling asleep, all that kind of stuff, right? He was just huge nerd, right? And I've said before, if you watch the channel, again, I'm someone that I taught myself how to be able to look at video games, to be able to predict them and all this kind of stuff, right? So as the years gone on, again, as I've said, a lot of times when I actually even meet people from this group, we don't play video games, or I don't play video games. It doesn't interest me. My life has moved on. Now, what you could say from that is we have lost the thing that made us friends, correct? And this is where this story gets like really, creepy and everything like that and dark, right? Because I said, these are people that I knew before I got sick. They knew me, radiation coming out, all my hair, all this kind of stuff. They knew me dying, all this kind of stuff, right? Some of these people have actually been there helping me when I couldn't walk. I've had some pretty bad times in my life, right? So this happened a few years ago, right? There's a group of us, right? And some of the guys in the group, they were talking a lot of shit. And it was more than just, sometimes you have banter with friends and you joke about friends and everything like that. But these guys, more so recently then, right? They were really digging into me a lot, that it was like, this is more than just, banter. You guys are being a little bit malicious with you're taking it a little too far, and it's like not cool. And they even actually went to the point of, they started joking about me dying. People that are supposed to be my friends. And they actually made comments how me being sick wasn't real because it was my doctors that got me sick, so it doesn't count. And it was just, they were saying some really creepy stuff like that. And, I let them know that's not cool. And they kept digging into it, and they were like and I was like, so I should say a couple of the guys in the group, right? Now, I was not at this event, right? But I'll split these into two. One of the guys, right? He's made some pretty poor life decisions, you could say. He was trying to be a comedian at one point, and apparently I never went to any of his shows, but I heard about his shows, that his shows did really bad and no one ever laughed at anything, and he did really bad. And other people at the friend groups would tell me this, right? And at one point, I don't know, you can leave in the comments if you've ever heard anything like this. It sounds weird. They have like party buses and all this kind of stuff, it's a party bus, right? Where people, God, I've never been in one. It's like a party bus, right? Well, one of his goals was he wanted to buy a bus, but then he wanted to make it a video game bus where kids would play. And so he would go to people's houses, he would bring all the kids in, and then he would drive around while they played video games. Sounded weird as fuck to me. I don't know. Is that a real thing? As I was like, dude, is that a real thing? Are you sure that's a good idea, putting your money in? Anyway, all this stuff failed terribly, right? And another guy, one of the guys had told me that, and he wasn't saying it maliciously, but it was an offhand comment. We were just like talking, sitting down one day. I actually kind of remember exactly where we were in his house. We were just sitting on the couch and we were talking about it, or he was talking about to me. He's like, "Hey, have you seen so-and-so's kid?" I'm like, "No, why?" And he's like, "Dude, oh man, I think he might be retarded. I think so-and-so's kid's retarded. Have you seen the kid?" And he's like, "Oh man, I'm just glad that didn't happen to my kid." Right. He's like, "That must really suck." Right. And it's like, "Oh crap. So of course it must suck. Of course, if your kid is retarded, right? I mean, that's a terrible thing for a parent." But whatever the case, so these guys, in the group, they were talking shit to me a lot, more than just like friendly banter, right? It was like saying like malicious things, like, and then joking about me dying. And it's like, it's not cool for you guys to do that. Don't joke about that, right? And then like, "Oh, it's not real. And your doctor's got you sick anyway, so it's not like it's real," right? And they started like, they just kept going on about weird shit. And eventually, I said, "Yo, dude, it's not my fault that you're not funny and your comedy failed. It's not my fault that you don't get to play with kids in a bus, whatever like that." And I was like, "You motherfucker," I'm like, "it's not my fault that your kid's retarded. Like, check yourself." Now you might say, "Oh my God, Clayton, I can't believe you would say that about his kid." And people are like, "Whoa, I can't believe you said that. Oh shit, I don't want to be part of this anymore, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Motherfucker, like, you were there. You've helped me when I couldn't walk." And it's just like, people are like, I don't want to talk about it. And eventually, the conversation got to, and I was like, "You know what?" I'm like, "I don't know what you guys' problem is." You know what I mean? But it sounds like you guys are just old and you have a lot of regrets in your life. So you're taking it out on me because you have like, family stuff, kids, and your life didn't turn out the way you want. That's not my fault. And it might have been exactly the last thing that was said. And they're like, "You know what, Clayton, maybe we are old. But you know what? At least we have something to say in life that we were better than just being good at video games and that girls liked us." And I was like, "Wow, dude." And then they're like, "We've always hated you and I never even wanted to invite you to my wedding." And when I was like, "Yo, you invited me to your wedding? If you always hated me, why you invite me to your wedding, motherfucker?" But that just goes to show you. And that's like and of course I've never talked to these guys again, right? I have no idea what happened to them. If you were to tell me that they're dead, I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked them up. You know what I mean? I'd be like, you know what I'd say? You know what I'd say if I heard that they died? I would say that sucks that they didn't apologize to me. That sucks that their friend that they've known since before I was sick, that they started to joke about me dying, they didn't apologize for that. But what I'm getting at too, and this shows how fickle friendships are, right? In a way, what they said was correct, though. At least in terms of their friendship with me. And they're like, "Well, Clayton, you don't play video games with us anymore anyway." Which I know, oh my God, the haters that watch my videos for video game stuff. "No, Clayton, we know you secretly practice every single game. Every day you're always playing everybody." You know what I mean? But in a way, it's like, wow, they're like, you could say that, yeah, well, that was what made us friends, the video game stuff, right? And if the video game stuff isn't there, what is the reason for us to be friends? They're old, right? They have kids, they have a family. Me being quotation marks cool and girls liking me, that doesn't benefit them because they have a family. Even though we had been friends for, I don't know how long it had been at the time, let's say 15 years, whatever it was at the time. It was a long time, right? That's null and void. Because most people aren't, real friends. Most people aren't actually friends forever, right? And that's an example of a story why, and I was pretty shocked. Like I said, it was one of those things that, I was shocked. I mean, it would take so long. I was disappointed that other people in the group didn't want to say anything. Right. And like I said, there's a guy that was there that he was helping me when I couldn't walk. And he's like, "I don't want to get involved." And it was just like, you know what? And that just goes to show you, it's like, and that guy, too, whenever I see him, we don't really play games. Right. So it's like, my friendship is not valuable to these people anymore. Right. And that's why I can also say, you know what, that's a weird thing about me. And I know I'm a bit weird in that example. I'm not someone, and you could say maybe it's because I grew up so unpopular. I'm never someone that I didn't make friends with somebody to get something out of somebody. And maybe you could say that it's a bit of a awkward scenario, because you could say, what did they get out of Clayton? Well, you got to remember, when I met these guys, I couldn't drive. I couldn't drive before, or I couldn't drive until after reload, right? People got to remember, I was winning tournaments before I could even drive. It wasn't until after reload that I could drive, right? And so a lot of people, they would hear about me. They're like, whoa, Clayton, this kid that, people don't. I've told the story before in Guilty Gear, dude. I beat people so bad in Guilty Gear. There was a time, remember, my first year of disability, I won every tournament basically besides Evo, right? There was nobody doing anything remotely like I was doing in Guilty Gear. I talked about before, a group of us went to that tournament in Pittsburgh, I think, right? The entire tournament got canceled when I showed up. People don't understand like what a different level I was on in video games when I was that young, right? And that's while sick. Like, people had to pray that I was sick to beat me, right? You better pray that I'm sick, right? Even, I think if you're not rent-free, a rent-free schizo who thinks I faked everything, you've seen, even when I've played online, look at what I've done with no practice, right? It just is, I have a little bit of raw skill in video games, okay? You know what I mean? It just is what it is, right? But what I'm getting at is, what did they get out of me? People would drive to see me from different places just to play at my house, to get a chance to play me. I told that one story before, and it's why I say it's a joke in the friend group. The friend group, I don't really talk to these people anymore. There was one guy that drove to play me, and he lived about an hour away, and he came with his girlfriend. And after he left, right, because he couldn't beat me the entire day, he couldn't beat me a single round. The girlfriend messaged me, and she's like, "Oh my God." I was about to say his name. I don't know if I should say his name. He cried for an hour on the way home. The girlfriend messaged me. She's like, he couldn't believe he couldn't beat you a single round. And he cried the entire, he's like, he literally, tears were coming out. He couldn't believe that he couldn't beat you a single round. Right. So, I was, at one time, I was pretty good at games. I can still fake it a little bit, although I guess it's been a long time since I played now. It's been years. God, it's been years. I haven't played Guilty Gear. Yeah, dude, because it's been years since I played Guilty Gears versus anybody. Carno's Revenge. Street Fighter, I think, is 2 years now, maybe 2 years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. I'm not sure. And even now is just a random few matches of Street Fighter Alpha. Again, I'm not someone that plays a lot of games, but you could say that their value to me was they wanted to play me, right? And I guess we all get value out of someone, right? But I guess I've never made friends from a perspective of just trying to get something out of somebody, I guess. It almost sounds like a sexual dynamic of, guy tries to befriend girl because he wants to fuck her, not because he actually likes her, kind of thing. Oh, we befriend Clayton not because we actually care that he's sick. And, how many people have I showed that, excuse me. Another dark part to this is, look at those examples of, I said before, I'm not someone that was a big online guy before. I know people don't want to believe it, but I didn't know that I knew people lied about me in the video game community, but I didn't know it was to such an extent. It wasn't until Buttmonger, started bragging about how lying about me made him popular and that other people should do it, that I realized, whoa, this is an epidemic of Clayton hate, right? But, I knew people lied about me, but I didn't know about it, that it was to such an extent. But once Dragon Ball came out And I started things that seemed like Twitter. Like, I'm not someone that was using Twitter and all this kind of stuff. I wasn't using Reddit and all this kind of stuff. And there are people that I knew in the video game community that I would still talk to randomly, right? And I saw it, and it's pretty scary. And I mean, there's videos about it on my channel. You know, guys that would message me sometimes, and we would still talk. That, you know, when I was dying was one of the main reasons I even made the Facebooks. My doctor was like, well, you know, here's your will, you know, you might die. So I'm like, oh God, well, I guess I better make a Facebook to see what's going on with people, right? And, you know, so there was some sort of reconnection with some of these video game people. And we talked randomly throughout the years. And every now and then I would go to an anime con and I might see them, you know, so a little bit of hanging out there. And then to find out years after that fact, when Dragon Ball FighterZ came out, and I started seeing like, whoa, people actually talk shit about me on a pretty big level. Like, what is going on? And you know what I saw? And I showed those Twitter things. I saw some of those dudes that I would see at those anime cons that would message me on Facebook, that were friendly with me. And you know what I saw? They were joking about me dying. How funny it is. Joking about leaving me for dead at a tournament. And I was like, whoa, these people are not, I can't believe I had talked to this person for years. And because I didn't have a real internet presence besides, you know, YouTube, you could say, if that's an internet presence, or, you know, certainly there was a time when my pictures were being stolen all over the internet, that kind of thing, right? You know, if that's an internet presence, which I guess it is. I mean, geez, I did get #1 guy in the world on that one website, which sounds cooler than it is, but it's a real story. So I guess there was some form of internet presence, but it was not, you know, me actually talking to people in the video game community, generally speaking, right? I wasn't, again, not using things like Twitter or Reddit, at least. But to see that, it was like, whoa, this person's not my real friend. And the weirdest thing is I called the guy out on it, and one of the guy's wives even messaged me. He's like, no, don't say that about him. He actually likes you deep down. He said it, but don't worry about it. And it's like, whoa. That just goes to show you, dude, that. And the thing is, it's like not a secret. You know what I mean? That you have people that are supposed to be your friends that would do that to you. And that shows you that, well, it's like, Clayton, your friendship isn't valuable. You know, most people are not real friends with each other. And that is, and that's why I always say that I prefer just to say, if you are cool with me, I will be cool with you. And I told that Mike Watson story. Maybe that happened a couple of years ago. I don't remember what it was, when Mike messaged me randomly. And he had told me, you know, Clayton, I hope that, you know, me and you are friends, right? You know that we're friends, right? And if you could think about it from this perspective of me growing up as a kid, looking up to even a guy like Mike Watson, and maybe if Mike said that to me as a kid, when, you know, Mike Watson considered the best in America by many people in Street Fighter. And if I were to think about that as a kid, as a Clayton, child Clayton, I guess you could say, I'd be like, whoa, oh my God, the best American Street Fighter player wants to be my friend. Of course we're friends. But me as an adult, you know, I even told Mike, you know, like, Mike, if you're cool with me, I'm cool with you. We don't need to put a label on it or something like that. And that's how I feel about most interactions now, right? Now, of course, I've had a lot of bad interactions. Most people watching this probably have not gone from one of the most unpopular kids at school to very popular, right? To dying, to very popular, right? Back and forth, right? I've seen every spectrum, right? You know, I've never had a lot of money, so to speak, but I have had, you know, some, you know, more well-off, you know, I've had different social circles to be able to at least dip my toes in a little bit of different things. Not like bajillionaires or something, but certainly, you know, I've been, you know, at parties before of very, 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 very well-off people, you know, probably more well-off than most people watching this besides If Palm Tree is watching, Palm Tree, I know Palm Tree says they're not rich, but Palm Tree is probably quite rich compared to a normal person, right? Thank you, Palm Tree, wherever you are, Palm Tree, wherever you are. We haven't talked in a while. I know Palm Tree does watch the videos, but anyway, that's my depressing story, dude, about friends. I mean, I don't know. I could keep going on, but it just gets more and more depressing about stories like that. But remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly comment, share, support the channel if you can. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.